Listeners, are you ready for a monthly literary adventure? Let me introduce you to the BFF Book Club. Join us each month to explore a new book across a wide variety of genres. After reading, connect with fellow book lovers and meet the author in a live Bookish Flights interview. Can't make the live? Don't worry, we'll send you the recording. Our September book club selection is Darkness Calls the Tiger by Janier Trump, which is a World War II historical fiction novel set in Burma. Head over to the link in our show notes to learn more and see our upcoming 2024 BFF Book Club selections. Hi, I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Niyati Goel. Niyati currently resides in San Francisco with her husband. She has explored more than 21 countries, collecting unforgettable experiences along the way. While Niyati's heart belongs to traveling, it also finds comfort within the pages of books, her earliest literary love being Ayn Rand. Now she is embarking on a new journey as a first-time author, aiming to merge her love for both travel and literature in a way that will captivate and inspire readers worldwide. Niyati holds an engineering degree in electronics from the National Institute of Technology and an MBA in Human Resources from XLRI in India. Welcome to the show, Niyati.
Thank you, Kara. I'm so happy to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, I know. I'm really excited. I love that you have a love of travel because I share that as well. And so I'm really excited to dig in today. Why don't you tell us? Let's actually start with travel. Where has been one of your favorite places that you have traveled?
Oh, so I've traveled like to a lot of countries, around 21 countries,
Wow.
but like there is one country which just keeps calling me back, although I haven't been able to go back to that place, is Istanbul.
Okay.
It's like a perfect, culmination of magic and reality.
Okay.
With an Asian culture on one side of the town, a European culture on the other side of the town, it's a perfectly fantastical, magical place. So that I would say is one of my favorite destinations.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous in pictures. I have never been there myself, but it looks beautiful. So, do you use this inspiration from your travel to write your stories?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, the very reason I started writing, and I only started writing last year, I
Okay.
never thought of myself as a creative person. I have, been in the corporate world for a really long time, and I've written nothing but corporate presentations and,
Yeah.
Excel sheets. But last year, I really thought that, my travel memories, I need to document them. And why not document them in a fun, adventurous, colorful way rather than just journaling about them?
Yeah.
So that is how I really started writing. So all of the books which I write are actually set in places I have been to and the memories I have collected. But of course, the plot is completely fiction, and that is something which I'm always excited to develop. But it's totally based on my travels, actually.
Well, what an inspiration to get that as you travel along. And then it also is like further gumption, right? Of like, oh, I should keep traveling so I can keep
Yeah.
writing about these new places. I love what you did there to keep that rolling. So tell us a bit about your books. And I know they're set for younger readers, right? Can you tell us about them?
Sure, sure. So, the primary series of books which I write, it's an adventure series, typically for kids aged between 6 to 10 years. And of
Okay.
course, younger children can really engage with them. Anyone older can also engage with them. But in my mind, that's the age group I really write for.
Okay.
And these books are a series of adventures. So, all of the books are a part in the series, but they can be read independently.
Okay.
So, like my very first book, stemming from my favorite destination, is the adventures of Asva in Istanbul. And
Okay.
Asva is this, young guy around 8 years old. He travels with his parents, who themselves are travel bloggers. They go for vacations in different places in the world. And then Aswa has this own adventure of his own, right? So he takes off from his family. Say they are in Istanbul, he finds a friend along the way, and there they find something mysterious, something adventurous, something which really is, super interesting for kids to dive into. And also, I think there are a little bit of uh, lessons of friendship, resilience, compassion, and empathy,
I
which
love
is
that.
built into the stories and the fabric of the stories. But yeah, all of them for sure have happy endings. So I think that's that's
Yeah.
one thing I keep consistent.
It reminds me a bit of, did you read The Boxcar Children at all when you were a
No,
kid?
not yet.
Okay, I read them as a kid, and then I've like kind of strong armed my son to want to read the first one, and now he really likes them. I'm like, you should try
Oh,
these. And it's four siblings, and then they go and they travel and they find like a mystery that they have to solve. And it's been really fun because I'm like, we're learning about these other locations and countries and places in
correct.
the world that I've never been to, or, we might not ever make it to. But then there's this adventure theme throughout the book as
Yeah.
well. And so this sounds perfect because my son is 8 as well. So this would be a really great addition. And I know you had one that just came out here in early April, right?
Yes, yes. So my newest book is actually The Adventures of Aswa at Jurassic Park.
Ooh, okay.
And this one is like a blend of adventure, danger, survival, and really thanking your stars once you survive those situations. And it blends in all of the magical tales we've heard about dinosaurs,
Okay.
right? So I think that's really the setting which and interestingly, I based this book because I went to Hawaii last year. And
I was
in
going to ask you.
Hawaii, a couple of islands are the places where all of the Jurassic Park and the Jurassic World movies have been shot. And when I was there, all I could think about was my childhood, right? I was in love with those movies. So all I
Yeah.
could think about was my childhood, and I never knew those places are in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So, that was really like my setting for this book, which we just launched in April.
Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about. When my husband first joined the military, that was where we lived. Was our first duty station was Hawaii. So we lived there for 3 years.
That's so cool.
And so I'm picturing the exact places you're talking about.
Yeah,
And I want to take my kids back. We did not have kids when we lived there. And I think
yeah.
for that reason, they would love to go to those places and be like, this was Jurassic Park. They would love that.
Amazing. I mean, there are things which I did not know about Hawaii at all.
Yeah, it's that. Speaking of magic, I always, whenever I think of that, I'm like, it's a magical place.
It is.
Do you? So Asva carries throughout the books then. He is the main character in
She's
each
the
of the
main
books. Okay. But we can read them, you said, in any order, so we don't need to pick them up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The adventures are all independent. The character of Aswa is something which is consistent.
Okay.
And of course, his learnings evolve,
Yeah.
but the stories are like completely different.
Okay. All right. Do you have a little notebook where you keep like little things about Asva? That way each story, like, oh, what his favorite things are, or do you remember as you write book to book?
Yeah. So there is a particular folder in my Google Drive where I
Okay.
store a few things about Aswa where, I want to keep it consistent and develop it further. So for example, his parents' profile. They are
Yeah.
travel bloggers, and they are invited to, in the next book, in international conferences. They find an Airbnb host who is actually a fan of Aswa's parents. And the same thing for Aswa, right? He is aging throughout the books. So
Yeah.
he starts at 7 years old, and then his next vacation is 6 months down the line, his next vacation is a year down the line. So he himself is aging throughout the books, which is like evident in the illustrations.
Yeah.
So that, and of course, his physical characteristics, the things he likes, like in the first book, he starts with, I start describing him as liking Turkish delights. So
Okay.
that is something which I carry over to, a subsequent book also set in Turkey. So a
Okay.
few things, yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned illustrations. Is there illustrations within the book as well?
There are.
Okay.
All the books are illustrated and all the books are completely like in color, large font,
Fun.
comfortable for any child to read, by themselves, or if they want to be read aloud too, it's
Okay.
easy for that as well.
Yeah. Do you do the illustrations too?
So I actually partner with an AI artist.
Okay.
So
Wow.
the illustrations are, AI generated. And the beauty of AI generated illustrations are they are very realistic. They're
Yeah.
very colorful. They are all in high resolution. But the best part is my learning while the artist is illustrating, right? So I learn to generate the right description for what I want out of the system.
Yeah.
So, which is a new skill for me, right?
That's
So
what
it's
I'm
not
thinking. I'm like, it's a whole new world out there.
exactly
Wow. Yeah, I guess you would need the right prompt, right? What's in
correct.
your head? Like, how do you prompt that to be made?
Correct, correct. Like, I just can't give the illustrator, sort of the paragraph from the book. It's
Okay.
more like, I want Aswa to be wearing shorts instead of pants, right? Or if I
Sure.
want them to be wearing a hat, or, and as the story progresses and someone is out in the sun, I need them to start getting tanned in later illustrations. So these kind of things are very interesting to actually build in.
Yeah, it's like a whole nother layer to just
It's so
writing the
nice.
book.
And I enjoy it the most because you get to see like so much color being produced against your words
Yeah.
that it starts looking realistic. It really starts looking like, someone has gone for a vacation to that place and is having a time of their lives.
Yeah.
So that's
And what a
exciting.
way to really be what you started, right? Of this to document your travels. And when you can bring these color images to life along with it, that what a beautiful way to have the memory of that.
Yeah.
So, which has been your favorite book to write?
Um, Actually, the third book out of the four-book series
Okay.
is, I would say, is one of my favorite books to write because now the reason it is my favorite is because the plot was something I got terribly stuck at, right? So that was a
Okay.
book where, I was waiting for weeks and weeks and reworking it multiple times till I sort of felt comfortable, inspired, and excited by the plot.
Okay.
So that was one reason that book, is definitely memorable for me. The other thing is the illustrations in that particular book. So it's about Hawaii,
Okay.
but not about the beaches, not about the Jurassic Park. It is about the volcanoes.
Okay.
So that is a totally new side of Hawaii. The illustrations are amazing. The plot is intriguing. And it is like, the entire book has come out like beautifully in terms of color. So that is one book I would say is still my favorite out of all the four.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. Listeners, that might be a good jumping off point for you as well. What have you learned about yourself through writing?
The most important thing I've learned is that I can write.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I say that is I have never tried writing as a creative person before. And, just a small story of what inspired me to get into this, right? So it was extremely serendipitous. I
Okay.
did not plan for this. I had not been waiting to write.
Lifelong
No,
dream.
not at all.
Okay.
I have always been a reader, so whenever I get too busy and I don't get to read books, I do like feel a little bit guilty. Oh my God, it's been like 6 months since I read a book, but I had no such feeling about writing.
Okay.
So one summer afternoon last year, I was watching the Titanic on TV, right? I think it's been uploaded on Netflix or one of the other platforms.
Okay.
Long 3 hour movie where you just enjoy yourself in the afternoon. And right in the beginning, there is a scene where the character of Rose, which is like Kate Winslet, she is shown like she is very very old, right? And someone comes and asks her that what was your experience on Titanic, and do you still have that necklace from XYZ days?
Yeah.
And then she starts the whole story. And in that moment, somewhere I felt that when I am that old, like really, really old, right, towards the final stages of one's life, will kids or people around me, younger people around me, want to talk to me?
Yeah.
And if I had stories to share with them, maybe then, yes.
Yeah.
And that is the day I started writing the stories I had before I, start losing the photographs, start losing those memories.
Yeah.
So that was my original inspiration.
Well, and I think it's your legacy that you're going to leave, right? Even
Correct.
even after you're gone, these will still be here.
Correct.
Yeah. I always think of that because I'm so terrible about printing photos, right? I was really good for a while where I would print them in these little
Wow.
books and I would do like the past six, whatever, had accumulated to make like the 50 pages of the book. And it was really simple. I have not done that in so long. And I'm like, what? I think of like my mom has given me photo albums from my
Wow.
childhood. And I'm like, I don't know that I have that for my kids. I probably should get on that before again. Like you just get so far down the line. And I
Correct.
think we take for granted that we'll always remember, right? And there's
Yeah.
no guarantee we're going to remember these stories, right? I mean, hopefully we keep our memories intact, but there's no guarantee of that. So
Yeah.
you're going to have this beautiful legacy of that.
So I think, yeah, that was like my main learning that once I started, I didn't know that I could write, but I could write and it came very easily to me. I
Yeah.
would open my laptop and I would start writing and I could write 2000 words in like one sitting and I was like, where did
Wow.
that come from?
Yeah.
So that I would say is one of my biggest learnings. The second is actually the entire book publishing process because I'm an independent publisher.
Okay.
So I learned everything from scratch. I mean, I learned writing from scratch. So of course, I learned the whole process of writing, editing, illustrating, formatting, re-editing,
Yeah.
publishing, marketing. So I learned the whole process. And I mean, just that new learning, which is completely different from my field at work, which is human resources. I have nothing to do with all this at in my corporate job. So there's endless learning for me here right now.
Yeah. And it's such an accomplishment to feel like you look at this book when you get it right. To be like, I did all of that. I did everything. And that's such a huge accomplishment. I haven't done that, but I think that often with the podcast, right? Of like, I'll hit a milestone. Oh, I just hit 75 episodes. And I'm like, I did all of
Wow.
that. And so I'm imagining it's very similar feeling for you.
It is. It
Very
is.
fulfilling.
Especially each of my books, I actually put it out in all formats possible. So
Okay.
there's an ebook, there is a paperback, there's a hardcover, and there's an audible version for all of the books I've published. It takes time to get all the
Yeah.
formats together, but I do want to complete it in all formats. The most interesting thing is when I get the hardcover in my hand, right? It's like a physical manifestation of what was in my head just a few months ago.
Yeah.
So at some level, it's like, you know, is this mine? And it's
Yeah.
very interesting.
What a unique experience, though, to have that.
Pardon? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then each time you come with a new one, you have it again. And that's beautiful. Well, what do you know now that you wish you had known back when you were starting? Since you've learned everything on your own.
Yeah, I think one of the things which I took the longest time to learn is how to get what you've written and what you've published to the right audience. So
Okay.
you could call that marketing,
Sure.
right? So distribution, I think for independent publishers, platforms like Ingram Spark and Amazon have made it incredibly easy for people like us to distribute our books,
Yeah.
right? There is like I really thank these platforms and other platforms like these. But still, to market your books, to create awareness of your books, that is a place which I wish I knew, as much as I do now early on. And my earlier books, I could have marketed them even more. So,
Yeah.
marketing is still a challenge for me. I definitely know more now than when I started out. So, I could have done more justice in marketing those books if I had known a few things which I know now.
Yeah. Well, and to your point though, is the more people will find you along the way, right? Even if it's they're finding you at book four and they fall in love with it and they're like, "Oh, well, we want to go back and read." I think there's people
Hopefully.
that want to go back and read backlists of things, and so then they'll,
Yeah.
the more that it goes, then they'll come
True.
back and they'll start and dig into book one and book two, and so hopefully it'll keep like a snowball effect going forward for
Absolutely.
you.
That is actually what I keep my fingers crossed for.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about, unless actually, one last question. Are you writing now?
I am actually thinking of the idea of my next book,
Okay.
and I started writing something, but I'm not going to publish that because there is an alternate idea which is more exciting.
Okay.
So definitely, like this particular idea is um, I've selected two places in the United States where I want to base my book in, and both
Okay.
are exciting, but I'm trying to take a call on which one to go for next.
Okay.
Um, and of course, like one is a city and one is a national park, but let's see.
Yeah. See where you feel called to.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears to who you are as a reader. Have you always been a reader?
I have actually been reading a lot. I think I used to read more as a child than I did as an adult. But over the years, I think reading has been a constant in my life. Right? I remember like I used to read a lot of Enid Blyton books, Secret Seven, The Famous Five, as early as I don't know, maybe it was class two or three. So I used to read a lot of adventure books by Enid Blyton. And then I soon quickly graduated to very complex books. So I fell in love with all of Jeffrey Archer's writing, like
Okay.
Cain and Abel. Like this was all before I was even 12. And
Wow.
then I quickly graduated to Ayn Rand books, which was all like philosophy and objectivism. So I remember that I started reading very early on. Then I think it fell off a little as I went to university and
Sure.
I didn't read as much, but I did pick it back up. So it's
Yeah.
been like ups and downs, but yeah, reading has been a constant.
I feel like that's the more conversations I've had that's very typical is we'll have this period that will stop, right? And a lot of times it could be university or your kids are, you have small children and you just don't have
Correct.
time. And it almost is, I always wonder like, what's the book that sparks your love of reading again? Because
Yeah.
I know what it was for me, like what really got me back into my reading life where went back to like, I read as a kid, like very voraciously, but
Yeah.
I think we all have that one book that sparks our love again because it's inevitable. Life is going to happen and it's going to take us away from
True.
allowing us to just sit and read books all the time.
True. True. No,
So,
that's true.
well, what type of genres do you enjoy reading now?
So I actually, so whenever I take a break from reading, right, for whatever reason, life circumstances, or I'm just being lazy, let's, in either case, I usually start with fiction because
Okay.
that is the one I can grasp
Yeah.
and come back to reading as fast as possible, right? I don't start with non-fiction political books. No, that's going to take me time,
Yeah.
and it's going to get dropped off if that's what I start with. So I start with fast-paced fiction, mystery, adventure, um, detectives solving crimes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I start with those, and I choose my books from the New York Times bestseller most in most circumstances. But then I take a break from fiction because I've got into a reading habit again, and then
Okay.
I move to nonfiction. Right. So in nonfiction, I like to actually read about world politics. So, what's happening in contested lands in different places of the world?
Yeah.
How did China get to the place it is? How does infrastructure in a certain country work? So even I mean, I one of my memorable books are reading, it was this thick a book, like really thick book about Vladimir Putin. It was just called Putin.
Wow.
Very
Okay.
interesting book, very interesting. I couldn't put it down. It was no less than a fiction book.
Yeah.
So then I read books like those, and then I of course sometimes I read autobiographies.
Okay.
But I'm very choosy in those because, I mean, if it's well written and it's written by the person, I think I like it a little bit more than
Yeah.
a biography.
Yeah. I think that's really important to know what books you enjoy. And especially for you, like you said, when you're out of your reading habit, okay, what do I know that I love and what's going to draw me back in? And I think it's important to take note of that, right? And this month, we're reading a nonfiction book for our book club.
Uh-huh.
And a few of the ladies have told me they're like, I am just not loving it. And I was like, I'm not really either. And I had read it before and I realized that because it doesn't have like a character arc within it, it's very just tells you about this place. And I'm like, I do enjoy nonfiction, but I like when there's like either a character, even or like it's a true story about this person and I'm still getting to root for someone. And I was like, okay, I need to take note of that with when I pick up nonfiction because I like to alternate as well. That I like to still have something that I'm rooting for, learning about an inspirational story of someone's life, or but it's important to take note of those little things so you know where you're going when you need to choose your next read.
True, true.
Well, in your busyness, how do you find time to read?
So I actually read at night,
Okay.
and so what reading fits very well with me helping myself to really get a good sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
So that's how I sort of link it. So of course my mind can't calm down at the end of the day, right? So I'm very wide awake when I'm supposed to actually be like very tired and ready to go to bed.
The wrong problem.
So I'm not yet in a habit of journaling or meditating. I can't do those yet, maybe one day. But reading is something which shifts my mind and
Okay.
it like slows down my breathing. And of course, there are days when I am reading well into the night, having taken a complete step back from the aim of the of reading.
Yeah.
But that's what reading does for me, and that's my usual time.
Yeah. I love that. It's like a structured part of your day, Okay, I'm winding down now. Gonna go grab my book.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, you've also brought a book flight with you today. And can you tell us a little bit about how you decided to pick these?
Sure, sure. So basically, my book flight is all of my favorite Ayn Rand books.
Okay.
The first one is her most favorite and most popular novel called The Fountainhead.
Okay.
The second one is Atlas Shrugged. And the third one is something called Anthem.
Okay.
So the first two books really have a very strong character, and not only one very strong character and protagonist, but multiple strong characters in the book. So I think, when I read those as a child, it made me brave. It made me brave to have my own voice. It made me brave to know that I can take my own decisions and I can act myself with or without support in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
So I think that is what it did for me because I was very young when I got into these books. Then of course, as I grew older, I learned about Ayn Rand's philosophy, which is also reflected in these books. So she writes something about objectivism,
Okay.
which is like let's use the let's be reasonable and use our rational capabilities to make decisions, so
Okay.
not rely overtly on policies of the state and rules, so it's not over reliance on that but on rational decision making. So these are concepts which I read later apart from what I had already understood in the books, but I think the
Okay.
what the books did for me was to give me a little bit sense of bravery, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I remember them for.
Okay. Well, and for listeners that maybe haven't read these books, could you give us a little bit about what each of them is about? And then they could figure out which one they might want to start with from your book flight?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
So, I'll probably, the book which I mentioned third is Anthem. Now, this is a thin book, right? This is not a thick book at all compared to the
Okay.
other two. And this talks about a dystopian society which is highly collective. So, that society is so collective that they forget the word I
Mm.
and they only remember the word we.
Wow.
So there is a complete loss of individualism in that dystopian society. And the word I itself is forgotten. And of course, things don't go well
Yeah.
down in the book. So
Mhm.
that's what Anthem is about.
Okay.
Um, and Atlas Shrugged and Fountainhead. Now, both of these books are about a powerful female and a powerful male character who do what they like.
Okay.
They do not follow rules, they do not follow society's expectations. They do what they like, and they are highly successful. And as a reader, you would identify a lot with them because they are achievers, and they are getting the things which, apart from just work related success, they are getting love and appreciation and other things in life, which actually, society, even in a society, you would be looking for that. So despite breaking away from the social norms, they are able to get, the similar things you would be looking from in a society. And that is very empowering. And of course, they are accountable
Yeah.
for their decisions. So there are goods and bads and stuff, but it's something which will inspire you. It's a book about leadership, I would say.
Yeah. I have had Atlas Shrugged, admittedly, on my TBR forever. And I think it holds me back because I know it is a thicker read. And I'm like, I need to make the time for it, right? In my mind, I'm like, I've got to fit this in. But I love that you say that because we've had this discussions a few times on the show about basically finding your passions and following your passions without the expectations of those around you. And how do you do that? How do you find out what that is? And maybe you went into a job in your 20s because of family pressures or peer pressures or just to get in a job, quote unquote. And then 10 years later, you wake up and you're like, I don't like this job at all. But you don't even have time to figure out what else you might have wanted to do. And so we've had this discussion a few times on the show. So this is a really great book flight to apply with that for someone that might be exploring, okay, well, what else could I do with my time? And I went through it a little bit myself. I was a physical therapist.
Oh,
And
wow.
then before I started staying at home with my kids, and I knew I wanted something creative, and that's kind of how the podcast came about. But I'm like, I really don't want to do a podcast on physical therapy. Not that I didn't love my job as that. I was just like, I want something else. And books were always my second love, but quote unquote, I couldn't have a job in books. At least what I was
Yeah.
told when I was a kid. And so here we are and kind of following this passion of that was my second love was books. So, or
No,
my
it's very
childhood love.
interesting to hear about your story also, Kara. And I
Yeah.
mean, the characters in these books, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, these people are doing what they like, but with full accountability and extreme hard work.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be called out, that you cannot, just gather self love. You need to work damn hard for your own love. If
Yeah.
you really want to like respect yourself, you really need to work very hard. So I think the characters also embody that, which makes them like, as a reader, you would really respect them because they are also working very hard to create their path.
Yeah. And like you said, as a reader, we'd be very empowered by them.
Exactly.
Whoa, well, this is a great addition because I feel like I said, we've had this talk on the show a few times, and this is a great trajectory to follow up with it because we've more done it as like entrepreneur book flights. So it's been more nonfiction based. So this is really fun to have a fiction because these are all fiction books, correct?
These
Yeah.
are,
So
yeah,
it's a fun fiction based way to explore things we've already talked about on the show. So thank you so much for
absolutely.
bringing this. How I love to end our show is with a our bonus pairings, and they are just a speed round of questions. So you can
Mhm.
answer these really quick. So
Sure.
are you a rereader?
Not really.
Okay,
There are so many books out there, so I want to catch as many I can.
I'm with you on that. What is one book you've read that has changed your life?
Um, The Celestine Prophecy. I read it
Mm,
as a teenager, and it was positive, eye-opening, empowering, and it gave me a window into nature.
yeah. Wow. You know, I've heard of this book and I feel like I can even picture the cover, but I don't think I've ever read it. So
Very
I'll
interesting.
have to check it out. All right. And then where is your favorite place to read?
In my bed.
Okay. All right. And then lastly, what are you reading next?
So I'm actually in the middle of this book called First Lie Wins. So
Okay.
it's like one of the current New York Times best-selling. It's on the list, and it's like a Mission Impossible movie. The twists and turns and the protagonist and the amazing book, really.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to add that one to my list. I haven't read it either. It's a thriller, right?
It is. It is.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Well, I so appreciate you coming on the show with me today. I know your time is precious and I appreciate all you've given me.
Thank you so much, Kara. I enjoyed this. I don't know how much you enjoyed it, but I seem to have enjoyed it even more.
Oh, no, we had a great time. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Niyati Goel and her book flight of Ayn Rand books. We'd love to hear what other books you'd pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.